Madhava Kunjabihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jabihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Astasata his Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Astasata Shishimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrindi Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopagopna Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Gangamai Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Gaura Premananda Hari Hari Bolo. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shishi Guru and Guru. Thank you. Can you get it? It's okay. All glories to Shishi Guru and Gauranga. His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are in the 10th canto and chapter 47, which is the Song of the Bee, and we're on text 3. Tam prashrayena vanata su sat kritam sa vrida hasekshana sunrita dibi rahasi aprichan upavishtam asane vigyaya sandesha haram rama patehe tam prashrayena vanata susatkritam savridaha sekshana sunrita dibi rahasya prichan upavishtam asane vigyaya sandesha haram ramapate tam prashrayena vanata susatkritam savridaha sekshana sunrita dibi rahasya prichan upavishtam asane vigyaya sandesha haram ramapate tam prashrayena vanata susatkritam savridaha sekshana sunrita dibi rahasya prachan upavishtam asane vigyaya sandesha haram ramapate. Devotees. Tam prashrayena vanata susatkritam savridaha sekshana sunrita dibi rahasya prichan upavishtam asane vigyaya sandesha haram ramapate tam prashrayena vanata susatkritam savridaha sekshana sunrita dibi rahasya prichan upavishtam asane vigyaya sandesha haram ramapate tam him Uddhava prashrayena with humility avanata bowed down the gopis. Su, properly. Satkritam, honored. Savrida, with shyness. Hasa, and smiling. Ikshana, by their glances. Sunrita, pleasing words. Adibihi, and so forth. Rahasi, in a secluded place. Aprichan, they inquired. Ubhavishtam, who was seated. Asane, on a cushion. Vigyaya, understanding him to be. Sandeshaharam, the message carrier. Ramapatahe, of the master, of the goddess of fortune. So translation, bowing their heads in humility, the gopis duly honored Uddhava with their shy, smiling glances and pleasing words. They took him to a quiet place, seated him comfortably, and began to question him, for they recognized him to be a messenger from Krishna, the master of the goddess of fortune. So you can repeat, bowing their heads in humility, the gopis duly honored Uddhava with their shy, smiling glances and pleasing words. They took him to a quiet place, seated him comfortably, and began to question him. For they recognized him to be a messenger from Krishna, the master of the goddess of fortune. So purport by the servants of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The chaste gopis were enlivened to see that a messenger had come from Krishna. As Uddhava will discover during his stay in Vrindavan, the unique gopis could not think of anything but their beloved Krishna. So Omajnana Timidandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I'll go ahead and share the purports from the acharyas. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur shares that they bowed their heads out of humility, being naturally bashful. They covered their heads with their veils. This bashfulness suddenly appears on its own when they meet any respectable person. Thinking that Uddhava must be an intimate friend of their beloved, they smiled and looked at him with open eyes, and greeted him with welcoming words, and worshipped him with foot wash and other items, adi, suitable to the place. Then they asked Uddhava questions in private, unseen by outsiders. By his coming promptly to such a place, they understood that he was bearing news about Krishna, the master of Lakshmi. Shukadev, siding with the gopis, showed some bitterness towards Krishna by adding Krishna as the husband of Lakshmi. In order to make Krishna happy, Lakshmi will be coming to Mathura, so what purpose could he have in sending messages to the cowherd women? We understand that to be the mood of the gopis. This, everybody in that place of Prema has different moods in their relationship with Krishna, but so Jiva Goswami's commentary is pretty much the same, but I'll go ahead and read. Then understanding that he was a messenger from Krishna, Ramapatahe, in a solitary place, they offered him a seat, given an article of worship, while bowing their heads humbly, glancing at him with shyness and smiles. They welcomed him with polite words and asked him questions. That is the order of their actions. He sat on a seat so they could be near him, since he recognized their great devotion. While with Kubja and others, it will be described that he also sat on a seat. What then to say of respecting the gopis? They bowed their heads in humility. They glanced at him with joy and shyness. They spoke words of welcome, which were skillful. Then they worshipped him by offering a seat, foot water, etc. Then they seated him in a solitary place, and since it would not be suitable to speak while a person is dissimilar of mood or present, they did this because they understood that Uddhava was a messenger of Krishna. They were certain that he had brought a message from Krishna for them. They manifested feeling described in this verse on seeing the auspiciousness and wealth of Krishna, who was the abode of even Lakshmi, reflected in Uddhava, as explained in the following verse. Jatite dikam janmana braja, shrayata indira shashvad atrahi. O beloved, by your birth, the land of Raj has become exceedingly glorious, and thus Lakshmi always resides here. It's a wonderful thing about the spiritual world, that there's a place for everybody and everybody's mood and relationship with Krishna. And then, excuse me, Sanatan Goswami shares that after surrounding Uddhava, the gopis remained with heads bowed in humility. Politely, Susatkritam, they asked him, Krishna's messenger, when he was seated in private, with shy glances and slight smiles and friendly words. They understood he was a messenger because of symptoms. Their love for the Lord arose naturally on seeing similarity to the Lord's form. The friendly words were words of welcome. They also offered foot water and other items, or they asked Uddhava, who had been nicely worshipped, Susatkritam. This means that seeing their love for Krishna, he became happy. Krishna is called the husband of Lakshmi because they thought that he could also protect them, or they understood that he was a messenger sent secretly. Harasi thus questioned him. So again, you can kind of see these subtle little mood differences that take place. But I guess speaking for myself, I was thinking of a couple of things that stood out for me in relationship to this, in that what we can see in this verse is hope. You know, because the gopis have this hope of connecting with their beloved who they're constantly thinking of. So they pull Uddhava into this place so they can have this private conversation in the hopes of him being the messenger of Krishna, having this deep, meaningful, even, deeper conversation about Krishna because they haven't seen him. And so what they're wanting to do is to connect with Uddhava and hear more about Krishna, right? And be connected even more to Krishna. And they've missed him so much that they're wanting to have this connection, even if it's not Krishna directly. So there's this hope that's, in their heart that's being expressed of connection with Krishna through this hearing and this chanting. We have this connection to Krishna for us, speaking for us, because obviously we're not in the same place as the gopis. But I was thinking again, this emphasis on how it is that we actually obtain this intimate relationship with Krishna. And it's through this chanting and hearing about Krishna that we go deeper and deeper into our devotional relationship. And so I was again brought back to what that means as far as this chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. And the second verse of the Shikshastakam by Lord Chaitanya came back to me as I was thinking about this, because I was thinking about the translation in this version that I have that for me echoed this mood of hope and the door that the chanting of this Maha Mantra opens up in our heart. And it's Shloka 2, which is Nam Nam Makari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Smarane Nakala Etadrishi Tava Kripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaiva Midrisham Ihajani Nanuragaha. In the translation, My Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, in your holy name there is all good fortune for the living entity. In your holy name there is all good fortune for the living entity, and therefore you have many names, such as Krishna and Govinda, by which you expand yourself You have invested all your potencies in those names, and there are no hard and fast rules for remembering them. My dear Lord, although you bestow such mercy upon the fallen, conditioned souls by liberally teaching your holy names, I am so unfortunate that I commit offenses while chanting the holy name, and therefore I do not achieve attachment for chanting. And of course, embedded in this, we understand that Lord Chaitanya, is a pure, is pure spirit soul, and that there's no fault on his part, and there's no fault on these great, devotees and the acharyas, Srila Prabhupada or anybody, but because out of humility, they, share the fact that they are committing these offenses because they're feeling this, that they haven't fulfilled their obligation and that they're committing offenses by that, and that's their pure utter humility. But in the same side, or on the other side of the same coin, is helping us understand what maybe our challenge may be and where we are, because at least speaking for myself, I know, I haven't realized my spiritual identity. I know that I am not attached to the holy names in a way that I should be, and that probably indicates that I'm not humble enough and that I'm committing offenses. And so there's this lesson for us that if we do want to have this relationship with Krishna, then we really have to cherish the holy names, and we really have to cherish and understand and see that Krishna will be revealed to us through the level and the depth of our chanting of the holy names. And that, in that realization and that uncovering of the holy names, is that it is non-different than Krishna. It's absolutely non-different than Krishna. And then from that, if we go deeper and deeper into the holy names, we'll be connected to him and we'll express eventually what will be revealed is our Siddhadeha. And I can't help but think over and over again, things that have been, shared by Prabhupada, and very much my spiritual master, even in a recent class, is that it's through the process of Krishna consciousness, it's through the process of devotional service, of practicing our service with humility, of, practicing the chanting, like being humble when we're chanting. If we approach, that bead bag and we pick it up and realize that those sacred beads, Tulsi beads in that bead bag, are the carrier for the holy names, and they're what attach us like an umbilical cord to Krishna through the chanting of the holy names, and look at it even before we pick it up, that, this is, non-different. This is the carrier that is going to take us to that which is non-different than Krishna. Then we can see the sacredness and the value of, the chanting of the holy name, and be able to think of Krishna always, because you see the gopis are here. They are incessantly thinking of Krishna all the time, and yet they still even want more and more and more. Oh my gosh, this is a messenger of Krishna. This is our beloved's messenger. He even looks similar to Krishna. I need to be able to connect with him, because they're so thirsty for Krishna that anything related to him, they want more and more and more and more of, right? And it's through this hearing. They want to hear more about Krishna. So that's our remedy. That's what we want to look like. It's like this, these two sides of the same coin or at least, this instruction for us that if we really want to taste and drink the nectar and always be happy and, see the value of everything that we're doing in devotional life, it's through this chanting of the holy names. It's just so valuable. And the gopis are giving us this example of, what it means to fully love and what it means to fully surrender, because that's ultimately what we're getting to, right? And surrendering is a scary thing. I was thinking about this, and that we're, through this process of Krishna consciousness, we're in this very transitional place, right? And the image that came to mind for me was like an hourglass, because it's full on one side. And, we're in the process of turning that hourglass with all that material mentality, filtering it through this, purification process of squeezing it through devotional service and the chanting of the holy names, and, purifying ourselves and going through this very fine sieve of, and then opening up into and becoming spiritually conscious. So we fill out the other side. And it reminded me also very much that we have to go through that very tight process, that very razor's edge, and going through that pressure of practicing and, constantly having feedback and, instructions and chastisement, encouragement, all those things, much like a butterfly has to squeeze through and squeeze out of its cocoon. And if it doesn't do that, and I'm sure you've heard that story of, the person walking up on the butterfly coming out of the cocoon and struggling to get out. So they use the little pair of scissors to clip it open. But what happens is that the butterfly can't fly. And part of the reason is that squeezing process and slowly unfolding that pressure allows all the fluids to go out into the wings so that it can actually fly. If it doesn't go through that process, it's not going to happen. And maybe the same thing is similar for us, going through the birth canal, is that, in order to, the pressure probably, stimulates the organs in the body, to be alive. So, so again, in this hourglass image, we have this material consciousness, all these, material lifetimes of layers of material consciousness being, pushed through and then opening up into spiritual consciousness. And we're, shifting it from one side to the other. And so it can be a little bit harrowing. It can be a little bit scary. It can be a little bit painful. But the outcome of all of that is being able to fully love and fully surrender. And that takes some level of vulnerability. It takes some level of courage, right, to be able to do that and to keep moving forward. That's something that I experienced pretty much constantly, is that, I'm constantly having these different challenges. But at the same time, there's this, in the back of my mind, there's this commitment that I've made to my service, this commitment that I've made to this process, this commitment that I've made to my spiritual master. And I have to remind myself, and I do, and even though, like an insane person, I do these things over and over again that I think I'm going to get some different result, and I get to the end of my day and can't, why am I doing this? Maybe I should just not do this anymore because I can't seem to get it right. And I'm like, no, we're going to get up and we're going to do it again tomorrow. No, we're going to get up and do it again tomorrow. And I've been doing it for 20 years, 22, 23 years of getting up and reminding myself, no, I've made this commitment and I am going to do it. I can do this. And slowly, things progress, and I get rid of layers and layers. And that's because Krishna and the spiritual masters see that we're endeavoring, that we are trying to get out of that cocoon. We are trying to transition our material conscious to spirit. And they know it's not easy. They know it's not difficult. So, they give us that feedback. Some people might call it negative or positive, but it's all positive, even the chastisement. Because that's part of that struggle to get out of that cocoon, to shift the consciousness, is to deal with the hard things. And, the thing about Krishna consciousness is it does put those things in front of us, and it does challenge us to take up that challenge horse and actually, or pick up the baton and keep running, even though it may be a little painful and challenging. Because at the end of all of this, we do get to love and we do get to, surrender. So we're in the process of surrendering. That's what this whole thing is surrendering, so that our heart can be pure and doesn't have any of that, any of those layers and weights of this material consciousness. And so we're learning to love Krishna, right? I mean, that's really this whole process is teaching us how to love Krishna, and to be spiritually focused on Krishna, to change our consciousness from, this material perspective. And, I just, for me, in all of this lies this hope, because there's this hope from seeing how the gopis have this relationship and have this loving relationship, and knowing, like I think, I really, really, really want to be able to love you, Krishna. I really want to be able to love you the way that you would like to be loved. And that's a really challenging place, because we have a very different view of what looks like because of our material training, right? Because our material training has trained us up, to want to have love to satisfy our own personal needs, whereas loving Krishna means doing everything to satisfy him, and doing whatever it is. Because when you really truly love somebody, you're willing to do anything and everything for them. But there's still, at least when we're doing this in the material world, there's some self motive in wanting to get something, because we want to feel that love in return. So I want you to do something for me so that I can feel that love. I want to have that relationship with you because I want to feel that love. And so, we're in this process of transitioning that and shifting that and changing our idea of what love looks like. What true love, pure love really looks like is so selfless. But what's amazing about it is that we get fully satisfied, and we get full affection, and we get full protection, and we get, happiness and all these things. Because, we hear about all these different relationships with, that the gopis have with Krishna, and there's these arguments, there's these battles, there's all these funny and, entertaining interchanges. Like I think of Madhu Mangal. It's like he's one of my favorites, because they're just hysterical. When you read through these things, there's just so much variety in the spiritual world. But, even all the challenges, like even with the, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, they were servants of the Lord that took these roles on, and, behind all of that, they're having these, amazing interchanges to fulfill the desires of Krishna, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there's so much taste and, relationship, and in these exchanges, in these bhavas, in these emotions, and the alambanas and the deepanas and all these things, my spiritual master's thinking about that stimulate us. The deeper and deeper we go into this chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, the more that's revealed, and the more that we'll get to experience. And we'll be satisfied. Just try to imagine that. Imagine, not to be manipulated by our emotions, not, to be manipulated by the modes of material nature, not to be stimulated by, somebody being upset or even, affectionate toward us, but, being in this place where we're totally fulfilled, we're totally happy, and everything's so fully satisfied. We're peaceful in our mind because we have this extreme, constant attachment to Krishna. And how do you get there? The gopis are sharing that with us, that we constantly hear and we constantly chant. When we're chanting, we're hearing, and in an odd way, we through the chanting, we eventually, like Krishna, we get to see Krishna through hearing. We get to touch Krishna through hearing. We get to taste Krishna through hearing. This chanting of the Mahamantra gives us all of that, right? So that because that's what spiritual bodies are about, right? And that's what Krishna can do. He can taste with his eyes, with his ears, with any part of his body, because it's spiritual. And so that's what, we're in the process of doing. And that's what, this chanting of the Mahamantra is so important. And I emphasize that because I'm trying, as I've always shared, maybe not always, but, in a lot of my classes I share, it's because I'm trying to remind myself the value of and what the chanting of the Maha Mantra is. It's our ticket to our relationship with Krishna. It's the thing that reveals Krishna to us. And because everything has to do with free will, is that we have to be the ones to choose to pick up those beads, and we have to be the ones to choose on how we chant, right? How intimate we choose to be with this chanting is our choice, and that's our strength and our determination. But the wonderful thing, as I've always shared, is that that's the significance of having the association of the great devotees, either through Srila Prabhupada, the Acharyas, through their writings, through their sound vibration in the lectures, through our own spiritual master, through the devotees association, is that we're reminded, like I'm looking now and I'm seeing each one of you and I'm seeing this little island of Krishna consciousness, right? And you all have your different personalities, you all have your different moods, you all have your different needs, but you all love Krishna. That's why you're here. And you're all making this effort to love Krishna and love his devotees and expand that family into the people that don't even know that they love Krishna yet, but they do because Krishna's in their heart. He's in every and I wanted to say he's in every single atom of the universe. Right? So all we're doing is we're just trying to recollect and, collectively bring all those atoms together in the form of love of Krishna, right? And the problem is that they've separated themselves sort of like a cancer, right? Because they've turned away from Krishna. And you can see it. I mean, you can see those cancerous cells unconnected to Krishna are in so much pain and are in so much suffering, right? And eating away, at any, prospect of spiritual consciousness. And that's what material consciousness is. It's a cancer. If you've ever seen a body truly eaten, by cancer, it can be pretty scary. And it's pretty nasty. And so that's what we're doing, is we're in this process of trying to surrender, but at the same time trying to love, and trying to simultaneously take the instruction and the chastisement, but, understanding that underneath all of that, it's being, done with the purpose of realigning us, right? Like a wayward child sometimes has to have its temper tantrum and, do what it wants to do because it thinks that that's it reminds me of the story of Srila Prabhupada talking about his son who wanted to keep putting his finger in the fan that was going, right? And he was like, I don't think that's a good idea. You shouldn't do it. But he was so determined to want to stick his finger in the fan. So finally, I think Prabhupada unplugged it so that it was going slower, but then let him stick his finger in, and it hurt. And he's like, and sometimes that's what it takes. I know that for myself, I've had to learn things the hard way. And I would have wished that I hadn't done that, but at least I learned the lesson, and we learned the lessons. But that's the whole point of chastisement. It's the whole point of the pain and the suffering. It's the whole point of karma, even of all the living entities, is to recorrect them and understand, no, that's suffering. Okay, great, go ahead, jump back in the material world, in the material cesspool, and swim around if that's what you really want. But I promise you there's something so much better. And, let me redirect you. I'll let you go through the pain, and I'll feel that pain of going through the womb, of going through that cocoon, of going through, that sieve and the hourglass to get to the other side of spiritual consciousness. And behind that is Krishna. And behind that is his love for us, because he so wants to see us. Because I think of, Gopakumar finally getting back to the spiritual world and Krishna hugging him. he's like, oh my God, I've missed you. You've been gone for so long. Why did you take so long? What took you so long to get back here? Don't you understand that I love you? I need you here. Why did you take this long? Why did you have to go through all that pain? Please. I mean, I'm just so happy they fainted, if I remember correctly. And all the residents of Vrindavan are freaking out. Like, who is this person that's taken Krishna? What have they done to him? They're going through this panic attack. Like, oh my God, that's a demon. We've got to get rid of him. But, ultimately, it's this expression, and that's what Krishna has for all of us. He loves us dearly, and he doesn't want us to suffer. But he's also equipoised. He's also the most renounced, and he's able to let us go through, our little temper tantrums and, work through what it is so that we'll come back to him of our own free will and, slowly realize that there's really no other alternative but to surrender and, to learn to love him. And, I mean, if you imagine that, going through that struggle and then finally releasing it, what that weightlessness feels like, to finally let go of the material consciousness and the material desires and all these things and really learn to love Krishna the way he's been, that he wants to be loved. And at least for me, that's been my prayer pretty constantly over the last probably year. And more intensely, I've had that desire, but it's like, oh, Krishna, Radharani, please, and especially Radharani, teach me how to love Krishna the way he would like to be loved. I'm still too selfish. I still don't understand because I've been trained up so much by the material world, to understand what I think love is. I understand that I have no concept of what it means to truly love Krishna without a material consciousness. And I'm afraid, I guess there's also this built-in fear, I'm afraid I can't do it. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to love you because this consciousness of how to love is so built into me. And I have this desire to be loved in a very specific way, to get Krishna's love instead of give Krishna love, that I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it. That's my biggest fear, is that I'm not going to be able to love Krishna the way he wants to be loved, and that I'm going to be too attached to my own idea of love that I'm not going to be able to give it up. But then there's hope, right? Then there's hope. And I guess I'll just share briefly that, and I'm thinking about this in context because I've been counseling my mother who's having a very, 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 very difficult time with her other child, who is trying to set boundaries and has been through a lot. And so she's in that kind of defiant stage. And so she's trying to and so she's been lashing out, and unfortunately on my mom. But I've been trying to help my mom, have hope, because every time I hear her, she says, I just don't think it's changed. I don't think it'll ever change. Nothing's ever going to change. Nothing's ever going to change. And I said, Mom, you need to shift it. You need to say, I do have my doubts, but I do have hope that we can work this out. So you acknowledge, you don't like suppress the fact that we have desires. We don't suppress the fact that we have challenges, that we have anartas. We don't obsess on them because, that can just drag us down into a pity pool, and that's all self-focused. We can acknowledge it, but then turn back and focus on the positive of hope, that I do have hope that I can make it. I will get up the next day, and I will try again, and I will get up the next day, and I will try again. And even though we go through so many different challenges, Krishna sees that struggle and he reciprocates with that, because ultimately he loves us and he's willing to let us go through and do whatever we feel like we need to do. But he encourages us for the effort. He will encourage us. He will support us, because we get realizations, right? All the time we get realizations of, what it really truly means, to get love from Krishna, because we're doing these little salt and pepper activities, maybe not fully, surrendered, not fully loving him, but there are moments when we love Krishna in the right way, and he reciprocates with that, because we're still here, right? And again, you're still here. I mean, I keep looking out and I'm seeing these little islands of Krishna consciousness, right? And it's just so amazing of the value that is. And that's because I can see your Krishna consciousness because you've been chanting and you've opened your heart, and that's evident in your presence, right? And that's what's so amazing about this process of Krishna consciousness, is there is hope against hope, right? Hope is never lost because we've taken the step to step in the river and walk the other way of everybody else. And we've taken the courage to step in the river and walk up towards Krishna instead of down towards the material consciousness. I mean, it's just, we're so very fortunate and blessed to have each other and to have Srila Prabhupada, the association of the Acharyas. So, all glories to Srimad Bhagavatam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Shri Radha Golokananda.
Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Marhamatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Agom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobha Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakalen Driya Vriti Manti Vasyan Vipan Kayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham
Krishna Ubadaya Krishna Prastaya Mudalay Shimate Bhakti Vedanta Samaniti Namane Namaste, Saraswati Devi, Guruvani Pacha, Nivesesha, Sunyavani, Paschachari, Zatarane. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaurata Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaurata Vrinda Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaurata Vrinda Chaitanya Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaurata Vrinda Chaitanya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha, Goloka, Radhe. Jaya Radha, Goloka, Radhe. Jaya Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Sri Radhe, Jai Om.
Sarvatma Snapanam Paramijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Mahodani Jasarva Shaktis Tatrapitani Amita Smarane Nakala Etadrishita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Gurdaiva Midrishami Hajjani Nanuraga Granada pi sunichena, Tarora pi suhishuna, Amani namana dana, Kirtaniya sadahari, Nadaram najanam nasundarim, Kavitam vajagadisha kamaye, Mama janmani janmani ishvare, Bhavatad bhaktir hoita ki twai, Ainanda tanuja kinkaram, Patitamam vishame bhavam buddha, Kripayata vapada pankaja, stita duli sadrashim vachintaya, nayanam gala shudaraya, vadanam gadgadurudaya gira, pulakarnishitam vapukada, tavanamagrahane bhavishyati, yugayatam nimishena, chakshusha pravashayatam, shunayatam jagatsarvam govindam virahena me, Ashlishavabadamritam banastumam adarshanam marmahata karotuva yatatava vinatolam pato prananatastu saeva napara. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you've invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen to the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Oh, my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will my hairs, my body, stand and end at the recitation of your holy name? Oh, Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he's always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Shikshastika Ki Jai.